Okay.
Ká sàn ní gbogbo ibi tí ẹ ti ń gbọ́ wa, èmi ọmọ yín náà mo tún mú ètò tèmi wá sí ojú ìran yín. Èmi ọmọ yín Owólabí náà mo tún mú ètò tèmi wá. Ní èní a máa sọ̀rọ̀ nípa Yorùbá, àṣà wa, ìṣe wa àti ẹ̀sìn wa. Bọ̀ tí a tó bẹ̀rẹ̀ ètò náà, a máa ní láti kí gbogbo àwọn aráalé tó ń wò wá. Ká sàn ní gbogbo ibi tí ẹ ti ń gbọ́ wa, èmi ọmọ yín náà. A máa ní láti kí gbogbo àwọn aráalé ibi tó ti ń wò wá, tó ti ń gbọ́ wa, pé ẹ ṣé, ẹ kú fọmọ ènìyàn ṣe ní gbogbo ibi tẹ́ ṣe ń wò ètò wa náà. A kí gbogbo yín, a kí àwọn ọba, a kí àwọn àgbààgbà, a kí àwọn màmá wa fún ètò ìníta mú wá sí etí ìgbọ́ yín. A ní bàbá wa Malik níbí, Adeolu, àwọn ló máa sọ nípa àṣà àti ìṣe àti ẹ̀sìn ti Yorùbá fún wa lórí ètò yìí náà. So bàbá wa, ẹ jọ̀ọ́ bá wa kí àwọn aráalé àtúgbọ̀rọ̀ ètò náà. Ẹ ṣé.
Ẹ ṣé púpọ̀. Orúkọ tèmi ni Bámidélé Malik Adeolu. Mo kí yín sórí ètò yìí. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Ẹ ṣé gan bàbá wa. A dẹ̀ ti dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín pé a pè yín lọ́wọ́ kan náà lẹ dá wa lóhùn lórí ètò wa. Bí ẹ mọ̀ wá dáadáa, a dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín. Gbogbo ọmọ ilẹ̀ káàárọ̀ oòjíire tó jẹ́ ọ̀dọ́, wọ́n sọ pé ti máa dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín fún pé a pè yín, ẹ dẹ̀ fi tọmọ ènìyàn ṣe, ẹ dẹ̀ wá sórí ètò náà láti wá sọ àwọn nǹkan díẹ̀ fún wa nípa Yorùbá, nípa àṣà àti ìṣe àti ẹ̀sìn Yorùbá náà. Wọ́n pé ti máa dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín gidi gan. Bàbá wa, ẹ jọ̀ọ́, máa fẹ́ tẹ́ bá wa introduce ara yín fún gbogbo ilé tó lè mọ̀ yín dáadáa. Ẹ ṣé gan.
Gẹ́gẹ́ bí mo ti sọ lákọ̀ọ́kọ́, ẹ ṣé púpọ̀. Gẹ́gẹ́ bí mo ti sọ lákọ̀ọ́kọ́, orúkọ tèmi ni Malik Adeolu Bámidélé. Mo jẹ́ ohun tí àwọn olóyìnbó ń pè ní critical thinker and researcher. Ìmọ̀ bá ṣe sọ báyìí lédè Yorùbá, ẹ má bínú sí mi o. So mo jẹ́ scholar of critical thinker and social and literary and as well as cultural critic. Currently mo ń ṣe research ní under a scholarship funded by the European Union. So mo ń ṣe research on the concept of asymmetrical dependencies ní West Africa. Gẹ́gẹ́ bí a ṣe mọ̀, Yorùbá náà ló jẹ́ number one tí mo ń research nípa wọn, but mo compare sí other West African societies. So ìwọ̀nba tí ẹ̀ tí mo lè ṣàlàyé ń pa mí nìyẹn for now. Ẹ ṣé gan.
Ẹ ṣé gan bàbá wa. Bàbá wa náà ó ti ṣàlàyé fún gbogbo ilé, fún gbogbo etí tó ń gbọ́ wa àti ojú tó ń wò wá pé àwọn kàwé, ó dẹ̀ gboyè ní ìwé gíga nípa àṣà àti ìṣe. But nítorí ẹ̀ náà la ṣe mú wọn wá sórí ètò náà, so yẹ pé wọ́n máa sọ fún wa nípa àṣà wa, because àwọn tó kàwé tó dẹ̀ gboyè gíga ń bẹ ni lórí àṣà wa. Nítorí ẹ̀ la ṣe gbé wọn wá sórí ètò náà tó jẹ́ pé wọ́n máa sọ fún wa nípa àṣà àti ìṣe wa. So bàbá wa, a ní àwọn question kéékèèké kan tó jẹ́ pé a máa ní láti béèrè lọ́wọ́ yín tẹ́ máa sọ fún wa nípa àṣà náà. So mo sure pé ẹ ti múra wá sórí ètò nítorí àwọn question tá a máa béèrè lọ́wọ́ yín. Kí ni ìdí tó yẹ pé ẹ fi lọ kọ́ nípa àṣà tó tún wá jẹ́ nípa àṣà Yorùbá gangan? Ṣé lè sọ̀dí fún àwọn ojú tó ń wò wá?
Yeah, thank you very much. Ẹ ṣé gan ni. Some years back, nígbà tí mo fẹ́ ṣe master's degree mi, I got a scholarship at the University of Berlin, that's Humboldt University. So láti mo débẹ̀, I was in 3 departments. We'll take a course with 3 departments. So one of the departments is the Department of Theater Arts and the Literary Studies, English Literary Studies. So mo notice pé many of my colleagues tó jẹ́ Germans, wọ́n lè sọ English púpọ̀ bí mi ṣe lè sọ. So inú mi máa ń dùn pé tí n bá dé stage tá bá máa ṣe exam pé máa perform better ju àwọn eléyìí lọ because English wọn wà very low. However, mo wá rí pé tá bá ti ṣe exam, àwọn máa ń ṣe I mentioned nearly the same thing. I want nearly the same thing. In fact, in back by 90s, I want to make by 90s in percentage. So I wonder, how did these people do it? So later, I'll just come find some of them in the library that they were actually reading and preparing for an exam, reading Shakespeare in German language. So I asked my money, but this Department of English, why are you doing this? And I will be like a strange person, somebody who doesn't know what he was saying. So I was upset. I was meeting professor, one of the professors. I was told teach one course. I want study in German language instead of doing it in English to improve their English and so on and so forth. Professor, only you colonized people. Only we are Germans. We are not colonized, or we are not colonized people. So we do everything in our language, in our culture. Only did you know, German in Yoruba, Mama share exam in Shakespeare. You know, Shakespeare is a British, English, one of the English masterpieces in literature. So on to Germany, only write Latin any of my exams in the language I speak. Only I'll be by one promote culture one. So later, I find out that students call exam in German language, not English. So, and they give them that. As long as the professor or the supervisor can grade the course in that language, they allow them to do it. So, these are some of the things. And language is one of the backbones of a culture. So, then one learn many other things. One will observe. So, as a matter of fact, to answer your question, Asha. But of course, but read this deep passion. I didn't have this deep passion for it until I traveled abroad to see how people actually are passionate about their cultures. So from that time, this is was on Yoruba. The master's thesis on that period was on Yoruba, the influence of foreign, what do you call it, on Yoruba identities. So, Bukba on Kaba all influence me lati ni passion from Yoruba culture. Thank you. Hello, are you there? Hello, I think the network is freezing.
Yeah. Okay, go fún answer te fún question àdúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín. Ó ti sọ pé tí ń béèrè pé inú báwo ló ṣe jẹ́ àṣẹ Yorùbá, báwo lẹ ṣe rí sí pé ẹ jẹ́ Yorùbá, because inú àwọn ìwádìí wa ó rí pé Yorùbá jẹ́ akíkanjú ènìyàn, jẹ́ pé tò sí ibi tá bá dé akíkanjú ni wá. Bọ̀ báyìí lẹ́yìn ṣe rí sí inú research yẹn.
Yes, akíkanjú ni wá on the one side. On the other side, báwo ni mo ṣe lè rí pé mo jẹ́ Yorùbá? What are the characteristics of the Yoruba? And the question, this is the question. And the answer is that if you want to find out what a people are, you need to find out about their identities. So our identities will demonstrate in our Katafide Yoruba, and this includes our cultures, a way of life, our traditions, concepts that have been given from transferred from one generation to another, and our worldviews, way of seeing the world, way of seeing humans, way of seeing God. All these concepts define us as Yoruba. So that's on the one side. On the other side, we also have many things, many achievements of our ancestors. Within West Africa, even in the whole world the world as a whole. So I want achievements. I want to show you to achieve. You contribute together to make us what we are as Yoruba people. So that's it.
Ṣé gan bàbá wa, àdúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín, bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe ń fún wa ní àwọn àlàyé náà, bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe ń sọ fún wa, inú mi dùn pé èmi gan mo ti ń kọ́ àwọn ẹ̀kọ́ kéékèèké kan bẹ́ẹ̀. Mo dẹ̀ sure pé gbogbo ojú tó ń wò wá náà lénìí náà, àwọn náà máa kọ́ ẹ̀kọ́ kékeré fún gbogbo àwọn answer tí ẹ̀ ń fún wa fún question náà a dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín. Ṣé ẹ lè sọ ìtàn díẹ̀ fún wa nínú àwọn baba ńlá wa bó ṣe jẹ́ Yorùbá?
That's why that's a very, very interesting question that people always ask. And some of the things that make them Yoruba. Because there are many. So which one should I choose? So I'll just choose a few because I think it's not even about what we are. It's not even about what one direction. There are so many directions. So let me talk about, for example, we have the Oodua period, which is about 1,000 years ago. But we also have people who also predate Oodua, who have also achieved many things in different ways. For example, we have Oromiyan who traveled all the way from Ife to different parts of West Africa and established even Oyo, made Oyo great and became the predecessor of the Oyo people. So all of these people, what are their characteristics? Number one, we have the engineering, we have the philosophy, a way of seeing the world. And then in the case of Oodua, we have this elaborate monarchical system. So Tabawo, this concept of Oodua, one of the influence to Lara different Yoruba group, this elaborate monarchical system. And we have some people, there is a kind of monarch, for example, called Ogbogbo. One of the characteristics that is known about that is this concept of making of iron in the region. So it's also, and the archaeologists have found out that this period also explain when we have been using iron to make things. So what about the glass beads? I think Yoruba is one of the regions in West Africa that were known to be making glass beads. So this concept of glass and using it to make beads, which actually were transported to different parts of Africa, even beyond West Africa. So all of this came from their form of the identity of the greatness of our ancestors. Recently, I was doing some research. I realized that this kente pattern cloth by the Ashanti people, making of soap, doing businesses, it was the Yoruba that actually taught these people how to do some of these kind of businesses. And I'm not making it up. Even in Ghana, they call it, there is something they call, the black soap, they call it alata semina. So the alata is, they call the Yoruba the alata, and the semina is soap in their language. So it means that it was made or founded by the Yoruba. So we see this concept of people learning from our ancestors, some of their achievements. We have the Dahomey, for example, that we actually sending their princes to Oyo to come and learn the style of monarchs, or how to be a style of political system, how to be a ruler. And we also had the Dahomey that were usually inviting people from Yoruba land, for example, to come and settle in their community for some years, to learn and to teach and to create these elaborate artifacts that we had. I don't even want to go to the case of the museums worldwide that that Yoruba artifacts occupy there. Now, when you look at what these people created or what were created, these things are still standing and they are still world class. In fact, maybe we might have come across it that even the Europeans, when they first came across some of these things, they didn't believe that the Yoruba actually created some of these things. They thought maybe it must have come from some elsewhere. So all of these things are achievement. And finally, how about Ifa? Ifa is a form of knowledge, it's science, it's philosophy, it's moral, it's education, it's sociology, every kind of activity, you find it within Ifa. So you can actually elaborate on it. Even computer science has been detected that Owala Taraifa. What about masquerade? We have one of the most elaborate masquerades probably in the world. In fact, our masquerade system with ancestral worship was so great that if you go to Brazil and different parts of the other parts of the world, you still see the influences. Brazil, their carnival, the masquerade carnival, is one of the most most viewed in the world, that people travel, or even from Australia and from different parts of the world to see it. And which culture influences it? It's Yoruba culture that influences it. So all of these things are some of the achievements, to mention but a few, because if I talk about it, to take forever. That's why I'm trying to select words. So, Eshe Pupo.
Eshe Gon Babawa. And I hope that just the proof one you just told us now, tó wà nílé náà, wọ́n máa lè get one or two things. Bí èmi báyìí ṣe, ó náwọn kọ̀ọ̀kan tí mo kọ́, tí ẹ pé tí mo mọ̀ tẹ́lẹ̀ rí, tí ẹ pé mo tún kọ́ ní àwọn àlàyé tí ẹ ṣe fún wa, ẹ ṣé gidi gan. Ṣé ẹ lè sọ fún wa nípa ìṣẹ̀ṣe Yorùbá àti ẹ̀sìn?
That's a very, very interesting question. I would divide it into three. Ìṣẹ̀ṣe, ẹ̀sìn, àti gbogbo ẹ̀ lápapọ̀. So I'll classify them into culture, tradition, and religion. So culture is a way of life. It's the kind of intellectual arts and creativity that people actually invented, practice. So, and when it comes to that, I think I just talked about some of them right now, and Yoruba are not left behind when it comes to that. The second one is tradition. Tradition are practices also, or belief system that comes from one generation to another generation. So it is being handed over to another generation. So, for example, we have the market system, Oja. And in Yoruba, for example, we usually have Iyaloja. It's women that would prefer to what do you call it, be the head of the market. That does not mean that, of course, men don't go to market. Anybody who are welcome see Ojawa. But kini reason táwọn èèyàn wa tí àwọn Yorùbá ṣe máa ń prefer láti lo Ìyálọ́jà or láti lo obìnrin kó jẹ́ olórí ọjà. It's some of the tradition that Yoruba believe that Oja is a very, very complex place, and it's women that can actually handle it very well. And interestingly, when women were handling the market and the economy, I think we were actually ahead of different parts of the world, because our economy was actually very, very successful there. So we know that. So I think our ancestors have so many things, many characteristics, many importance on that women can actually do successfully. And Oja is something that has to be concept of Abo. And Abo means something that is progressive, rigid, flexible. And economy has to be like that. So for economy to be progressive or be flexible or to be successful, they prefer to use women. So these are some of the traditions we have that actually uphold our society. The third one, only religion. You translate ẹ̀sìn, which is actually not something the Yoruba actually are very, very keen about. Religion is a concept of belief in supreme being. And this supreme being or supreme beings like God or gods. So the belief that we have this religion or means that we have this concept of God, but the Yoruba concept of God is different from what is regarded as Abrahamic concept of God. The Yoruba have polytheism, that is, we have multiple ways of relating to God or seeing God. And the West, or what I would call the Islam and Christianity, have what is called monotheism. That is, there's only one way. So it's a kind of linear. That's okay. God is a man, and then followed by the priest and who are also usually supposed to be men. But the Yoruba had a different idea that, okay, God can be man, can be woman, can be neutral, or combination of all of these things. So my point is that the Yoruba integrates all these things together and to make it a way of seeing the world. That's why we have different Orisha system and different Irumole, a way of seeing. And you can actually choose between amongst any of these. And you can actually change. Yoruba have a proverb, they say, Orisha, it means that you can actually switch from one to another. So when you don't actually, when you think that, okay, you are adhered to Oshun, and Oshun is not actually working the way you can actually switch. And you can also combine. So all of these things exist, and there's this less threatening And that's why Yoruba, this informed Yoruba concept of democracy, whereby everybody matters. And Yoruba can actually create different kind of ways of life and still live together harmoniously. And you will actually realize that Yoruba still have one of these peaceful way of living together. The University of Birmingham actually carried out a research in Yoruba land, I think about a decade ago. So they resided in Oshun and some part of Yoruba land. And one of the professors was was actually surprised that Yoruba actually have a way of living together even more peacefully than even the she was actually surprised about that. So the reason is because of this knowledge of religion or worldview. Because I usually prefer not to use religion, I usually use worldview because religion is a little bit more political. That okay, if you don't believe in God, you might burn in hellfire and something like that. But you actually have a more elaborate concept about it, and the threatening is less. It's less powerful. Let me put it that way. So that's how Yoruba see. So in Gatali or Isheshe Yoruba. And well, this might also have a little bit of disadvantage because it's also one of the reasons why the Yoruba were tolerant when it comes to other religion coming to Yoruba land. It was one of the reasons because they don't see anything as threatening. But when you look at other religion, for example, look at Islam, the history of Islam, look at the history of Christianity, even in the Western world, there are times that certain Christian sects, like Catholic, for example, can go to a town that is regarded as Protestant, like Anglican, Methodist, or co. So they can go there and murder everybody, and the Pope will send them, will, hail them that yes, people like you will go to heaven. It's well documented in the history of Christianity. Yoruba didn't have this concept of having to see other people as threats to them. Everybody actually have their own practices and they live together harmoniously. So all of these things have a way of developing or creating the Yoruba concept of what the West would regard as democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for our answer question. Mo tún fẹ́ béèrè àwọn ìbéèrè kankan nínú ìṣẹ̀ṣe yẹn àti ẹ̀sìn ìlà tó wà láàrin wa mọ̀ ó yà lọ́tọ̀ọ̀tọ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ tẹ́ bá wa fi ìlà sí bó ṣe jẹ́ ẹ̀sìn ṣe dúró lọ́tọ̀ bí ìṣẹ̀ṣe bó ṣe dúró lọ́tọ̀ because àwọn míì máa ń mix ẹ̀ papọ̀.
I think one thing we should understand ní ìṣẹ̀ṣe ni pé, for example, the Yoruba have the concept of Olodumare. Yes. Some will call it Eledumare. When the Yoruba describe Olodumare or Eledumare, they are not thinking about he or she or it. They are thinking of power beyond even that you can even classify as a kind of gendered person or gendered being. So they see it as something supreme. So you can use so many characteristics to define Olodumare. But this concept of, he or she, because also know that in Yoruba language, this concept of he or she is not really very, very strong. We don't even have a word for he, she, it in Yoruba, actually. The word is O, and the O is actually can be a man or woman or neutral. So when you look at this is one unique definition of Yoruba, Isheshe, which does not actually politicize way of politicized worldview. But when you look at religion or a saint, so to say, God is a male. There's no what you call it about that. And even until recently, it was not even allowed for women to do many things because they are not regarded, they are regarded as inferior. There's no concept of women's inferiority in Yoruba concept. And I always, when people ask me this question, in Kotima emphasizing, Yoruba have a way of seeing the world. They see that everybody matters. And even to make it even easier, they don't try to classify Olodumare to be one because it will also create a kind of political concept. And when you create a political concept, you will now be looking for, okay, how do we create equality? I always tell people, this gender equality or what do you call it? If we follow Yoruba way of seeing the world, we will not have problem with it because we deal in a way of respecting people. Everybody knows their own, what do you call it, their own standard or qualities. And everybody has significance in Yoruba concept. Secondly, when you look at Isheshe, we have so many practices. We have Oloshun, Unishango, Elenyile, Oya, and Co. You will notice that some are male, some are female, some are masculine, some are feminine, some are combination of the two, some are, in so many ways, they try to make it varieties. But it's not like that when you come to Esin. It's entirely different. That is one. Another one that is also very, very interesting when it comes to tradition is also a concept of spirituality. So it's like when you, something that makes you unique or different from others, something that makes you demonstrate that you have a way of seeing the world, and you might even have certain qualities that others don't have, or you have a unique way of understanding some certain things. And it was actually well accepted. And that's why we have all this concept of different children that were born by different names in Yoruba concept. We have Dada, we have Aina, Ojo, all Ige, all these names. So the Yoruba are observing and they are looking at their characteristics. So some of these things, you would also notice that some of these things were also tagged as evil in the Christian, in the religious realm, that is an Abrahamic religion. So when you look at all these things, you will see that Yoruba already create a kind of elaborate way of seeing the world. Now, when you look at the world today, you look at the Western society today, they are battling some of these things. They are trying to see how we can make the world freer, how we can create a democratic society, how we can create concepts of equality and so on. But the Yoruba did not have problem with some of these things because they already integrated everybody into the society and see people that people can be different and they can be, but they can also have a way of life, and they try to train them to look at this way. The final concept about religion, Esin, Ati Isheshe, is also what probably obvious to you in our societies today. In Yoruba Isheshe, whether you are the head of the Adeolu or the head of what you call it, when punishment or you are not above the law. But let's look at our Abrahamic religion. Let's give example of how it is being practiced in Nigeria today. You will notice that there are some certain religious leaders that are above the law. Some people, because of their position, they are above the law. Some of these things are actually very, very lower in our Isheshe or traditional practices, because everybody is equal before everybody is seen as equal. We have rules and regulations that affects everybody in nearly equal way. So these are some of the explanation I want to give. I have further explanation, but I don't want to go too deep into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ẹ ṣé gan bàbá wa. Ẹ ṣé fún àwọn answer tẹ́ fún wa fún question tàbí lọ́wọ́ yìí. Èmi náà mò ń kọ́ nǹkan bẹ̀ sure pé gbogbo àwọn tó ń wò wá àti etí tó ń gbọ́ wa wọ́n ń kọ́ nǹkan nínú àlàyé tí ẹ ṣe fún wa nípa ìṣẹ̀ṣe àti ẹ̀sìn wa náà. Màá tún move lọ sí ẹ rò pé àwọn òrìṣà wa ẹ rò pé ó ní láti máa bọ wọ́n.
It's very important. What are Orisha in the first place? Orisha are certain unique symbolic beings that have lived, that are believed to have lived at certain period and are being deified because of their significance. So of course, it's very important that we honor them. I use the word honor. Come on, come on, Simon. I think it's amazing thing. I think everybody else does it. You go to India, they honor their what they call, even in Europe, they honor their ancestors and they honor their Orishas. We often overlook that they don't do that, but they do it. You go to certain European cities, you see more statues and so on than humans. And they actually honor this, what they call it. If you want to prove me wrong, just go to one of those statues and slap it. You see how police will arrest you. They will create a law against you. So they honor them, they worship them, they respect them. So, one of the ways to fi ṣe pàtàkì láti pé ká máa bọ òrìṣà wa ni pé ó tún máa ń fún wa ní àǹfààní láti Later respect environment, nature. When you look at it today, the world is facing this global warming, this environmental degradation. And at the end of the day, they will tell us that the West will tell us that they want to come and teach us how to respect our environment. But come back up our environment, you in practice for time immemorial. Recently, the last time I was at the University of Ibadan, I was exploring some archives. So some of the documents that were documented about legal system in Yoruba, traditional legal system, I realized that almost in everything, there is this concept that if you destroy a tree, you are punished or you pay fine for destroying a tree. I was actually shocked that, so they have these rules and regulations. So take for another example, look at River Oshun, for example. If you respect the River Oshun, to take River Oshun, there can be deity or important. What do? You will never dump refuse inside Oshun. Okay? You will never dump refuse in Oshun. But that's also scientific, because some of the problems why we are facing flood and so on is because of the plastic and other particles we are using that we are dumping into the water, and it's blocking some of our waterways. These are where we are having, these are some of the problems we are having. And many Yoruba societies also have a way of breeding creating nature. When you go to nearly every European city, they always have areas like park where they have trees that you don't touch, you don't do anything to. These are things that we practice in Yoruba. We have Igbo, and so on. We call it different names. Some people will call it certain English names. They call it evil forest. I don't call it evil forest. I call them sacred forest because it was actually sacred. Yeah. So many of these places were important. And as a matter of fact, the Osun Osogbo you are looking at today, there was a time whereby there were forests around Osun, and it was believed that any herbs you are looking for, because those places have been preserved for years, for centuries. So all these mentalities also help us to protect our environment in an indigenous way, without having to even invite anybody to come and teach us. So they are important.
Òun náà ni gbogbo àwọn tó ń gbọ́ wa nílé, gbogbo àwọn ọmọ Yorùbá tó ń gbọ́ wa nílé, ṣé ẹ̀ ń gbọ́ bí bàbá wa ṣe ń ṣàlàyé fún wa pé àwọn òrìṣà wa a ní láti máa bọ wọ́n. Èyí tẹ́ bá ti mọ̀ pé ó ti pẹ́ tẹ́ ti bọ wọ́n, ẹ jọ̀ọ́ ẹ tètè máa bọ wọ́n, ó ṣe pàtàkì fúnlẹ̀ Yorùbá. Ẹ ṣé gan bàbá wa. Màá tún béèrè pé ẹ mọ̀ àwọn aláwọ̀ funfun pẹ̀lú ẹ̀sìn tó gbé wá fún wa nílẹ̀ Yorùbá, kí ni ipa tó kó nílẹ̀ Yorùbá?
This is a very big question, but not also so big. I think àwọn ipa tó kó náà wà obvious fún wa, ó jẹ́ àwọn nǹkan tá à ń rí, because I think it's such a nǹkan ìyàlẹ́nu ló jẹ́ pé Yoruba land, like other African societies, virtually all African societies, are the regions whereby you go there, the most famous concept or the most famous religions are usually the religions of the foreigners or people that bring something they brought to us. And in fact, all the stage you can see to last time, I think at an office, register for PVC or something like that. I don't know. So anyone very quick lesson. Only why are you doing that? And yeah, why, it's like if I said that I'm a murderer. And that's actually very, very, we need to develop one thing before we can even talk about that. We need to first of all develop our critical thinking. I need that develop mind you are first. I need that to learn, that's my very question. I need that to develop a knowledge system. Because how can I convince you that anything that looks like you, anything that is you is bad? And you accept it. And you from now you say you're educated, you are developed, or whatever the case may be. And they even tell you that, oh, you were evil, and you believe it. You don't even have any evidence. You don't even have enough evidence to back it up. Because yes, when we talk about evil or something, there's no society that didn't have a probably terrible past. Europe have way bloodier past than we do, like Britain, like France and co. And they even still have it today. But yet, these are people we look up to as, the supreme people or the best people. How about our own things? I believe what we have is evil. So I think one of this is because the foreign influence actually create this concept of a issue is evil, which is actually ridiculous anyway. That issue is evil, that anything that represents us is evil, but there are so many things that this thing can benefit us. And we have actually destroyed many of them. We have actually, we have destroyed the image. So I would say external religions have a bad influence on us. But I'm always very careful to not actually say, try to blame people. I also question people personally that, okay, can't you actually develop your mind and say, well, even if you tell me this, try to question things. And in terms of worship, for example, the word idol, the word juju, I always tell even journalists, a Yoruba journalist or an African journalist will call our symbols, juju, evil, all these things, or idol. But do you call the foreign one evil? Because Mary, think about Mary, that is also symbol. But do you ever hear people call it idol? No. But think about anything to represent ancestral. Juju is a French word for toy or child's play, something that is not important. And the idol actually means, kind of believing in object that is not really, that is insignificant. So all of these things, when you look at this, how can somebody convince you this way? And you cannot do your own, do your own findings to find out what are the meanings of these things. And the same people are actually bringing this, you are actually honoring their own in the name of your own. Even if you say you are a believer. And, one thing that is interesting is that I want to call Nipa Ifa, I want to call Nipa Ashawa during the colonial period. And when you go, most of them she pastor, most of them she imam. Why did they do that? Because if you don't want follow a lesson, superior tiwa. I want to know àwọn kan wá tó dẹ̀ yẹ pé tiwa náà jẹ́ superior. So àwọn yẹn kan náà wá lọ ṣe research tó find out nǹkan tí àwa náà ní. So many of the history of our symbol or Ifa and Co, many of them were actually written by people who were actually once or who have converted to other religions. So, but nowadays, some of these things are actually growing more influence, which is not actually, it's not okay. Yeah.
Ẹ ṣé gan bàbá wa. Fún àlàyé tẹ́ ṣe fún wa, mo sure pé àwọn tó wà nílé ó gbọ́ gbogbo àlàyé tẹ́ ṣe. Mi náà fẹ́ fún àfikún díẹ̀ sí ni, because ó ní àwọn bàbá wa kan tó yẹ pé professor náà ni wọ́n tó yẹ pé ó gba ipò gíga nínú ìwé gíga. So nígbà yẹn ó lọ sí Egypt, ọ̀pọ̀ àwọn fẹ́ lọ kọ́ èdè Egypt. But nígbà tó dé Egypt, ó ní láti dá wọn padà sílẹ̀ Yorùbá. Ó pé tó kọ́kọ́ lọ kọ́ ilẹ̀ Yorùbá àti àṣà Yorùbá dáadáa. So ó débẹ̀ ọgbẹ́ rárá pé òun ti mọ̀ ọgbẹ́ rárá pé kò tí ì mọ̀, because ó ní àwọn nǹkan kan míì tó yẹ pé ó máa ní láti kọ́ láṣà Yorùbá, because àṣà Yorùbá òun ló jẹ́ nǹkan tó jẹ́ pé pòógì ní gbogbo àgbáyé, because àwa ọmọ Yorùbá fúnra wa kọ́ àmọ̀ yẹn.
Bẹ́ẹ̀ni ó ṣe pàtàkì.
Ẹ ṣé gidi gan bàbá wa. Máa tún béèrè àwọn question kékeré kan náà again lọ́wọ́ yín. Tá bá sọ nípa ìdánimọ̀ àwa Yorùbá, pé àwa Yorùbá ibo la wà ní ipa ìdánimọ̀ wa, because bí èmi ṣe ń wò ìdánimọ̀ wa bíi pé a ti fẹ́ sọ ìdánimọ̀ wa nù, because a ti fẹ́ gbé ìṣe àwọn western world a ti fẹ́ gbé wọ̀, a fẹ́ mọ ìdánimọ̀ wa wọ́n. Kí lẹ lè bá wa sọ nípa yẹn sà?
Ìdánimọ̀, which is identity, it's there are so many ways there are so many ways. So for example, identity wa Oba, this Obaship is our identity. Our way of seeing gender is our identity. Ìlà kíkọ is our identity. Oúnjẹ tá à ń jẹ, identity wa náà nìyẹn, ìdánimọ̀ ara àwọn ìdánimọ̀ wa náà nìyẹn. Bá a ṣe ń sọ Yorùbá ara àwọn ìdánimọ̀ wa ni, fìlà tá dé, gbogbo àwọn aṣọ tá à ń wọ̀, gbogbo àwọn kan báyìí ní ìdánimọ̀ wa. Ó dẹ̀ ṣe pàtàkì pé ká maintain ká withhold. You know, if you watch Japanese documentary, once you man because that's their culture, that's their form of identity for them. And when they greet, the way don't practice for thousands of years. Once you maintain it, they are not ashamed of it. So in Gotoba ti share, and Toba sọ pé òun ojú ń tì òun fún àwọn àṣà wa ìdánimọ̀. Irú ẹni bẹ́ẹ̀ any problem nìyẹn. Exactly. So that is on the one side, but we also need to be careful. There are certain aspects of our ìdánimọ̀ tó jẹ́ pé of our identity or culture tó jẹ́ pé ó lè wà dehumanizing, and one of it ni ìlà kíkọ. So for example, ìlà kíkọ dá ó ṣe pàtàkì, but ìlà kíkọ ó better téèyàn bá dàgbà tó pé bí tó kọjá 18 years, ọmọ ọdún méjìdínlógún, tó bá wù láti kọlà kó kọlà fúnra ẹ̀, ju pé kán ọmọ kékeré tí ò mọ̀ nǹkan kan kéèyàn kọlà, because the pain téèyàn máa ń kó ń bẹ̀ kò ṣe nǹkan pé is what they call it. And I'm not destroying the way our ancestors practice it, but you know, that's why we call it culture. Culture also progress and are being remodeled. So I'm not saying ìlà kíkọ ò dá, bẹ́ẹ̀ pé kéèyàn wá, you know, kéèyàn sọ pé òun fi ọmọ kékeré bí punishment ló ṣe máa rí fún ọmọ kékeré. So àwọn àṣà wa tó bá gbéyàn lárugẹ, tó gbé wa lárugẹ, ó necessary compulsory ká promote ẹ̀. Èmi báyìí mo máa ń jẹ oúnjẹ Yorùbá, tí n bá dẹ̀ fẹ́ jẹ iyán, tí mo fẹ́ jẹ ẹ̀bà, tí mo fẹ́ jẹ kínní. Ọmọ Èkìtì ni mí, tí n bá fẹ́ jẹ oúnjẹ, tí n bá mo like iyán gan ni. Tí n bá dẹ̀ fẹ́ jẹ iyán, ọwọ́ mo fi ń jẹ, mi ò kì í fi ṣíbí jẹ. Because mi ò ní sọ pé kínní bí mo dẹ̀ wà láàrin kí n wà ní White House ní US. Tí wọ́n bá sọ pé oúnjẹ wo ni mo fẹ́ jẹ, tí wọ́n bá sọ pé iyán wà lára mi nínú wọn, tí wọ́n bá ti gbé fún mi báyìí, ọwọ́ ni máa fi jẹ. Mi ò ní sọ pé torí pé mo wà ní ibì kan pé kínní kan, pé mi ò fẹ́ ojú ń tì mí. Kí ló ń tì mí lójú? So àwọn àṣà, àwọn identity ó yẹ ká promote it, because your identity is what actually upholds you. That's what we don't know. For example, téèyàn bá pàdé mi tàbí téèyàn bá pàdé irú ẹ̀yin báyìí níta, wọ́n lè sọ pé, are you from Mali? Are you from kìnìkan? Bẹ́ẹ̀ kí ló lè differentiate as Yorùbá sí àwọn míì? Àwọn nǹkan kéékèèké àṣà, èdè wa dẹ̀ ṣe pàtàkì fún wa. Èdè wa wà ńbẹ̀, àṣà wa wà ńbẹ̀. Gbogbo àwọn nǹkan tá à ń practice, táwọn àwọn ancestors wa ń practice, tó jẹ́ pé wọ́n tó jẹ́ nǹkan táwa náà lè practice. Nǹkan tó wà interesting bẹ́ẹ̀ ni pé téèyàn bá promote àṣà ẹ̀, téèyàn promote identity ẹ̀, there are some aspect of it téèyàn lè market tó jẹ́ kó máa jẹ́ kéèyàn tó wà progress. So some of these things, when we pay attention to them and develop them, there are many things we can actually benefit from it, apart from upholding the Yoruba. One of the reasons why the Yoruba are still the most narrated in the world, or the most narrated Africans, one of the most narrated Africans in the world today, is because of our people who have refused to abandon their identities. Even àwọn tí àwọn òyìnbó fi kákó lọ sí òkè òkun, wọ́n lọ maintain gbogbo àwọn culture wọn, wọ́n maintain gbogbo àwọn practices wọn, gbogbo àwọn nǹkan táwọn tó ń ṣe láti dé gbogbo ẹ̀ náà kú lọ sọ́hùn. Hello, one thing, they are highly progressive. So àṣà wa ṣe pàtàkì. So imagine pé ká má kó àwọn nǹkan báyẹn lọ, a máa pàdé wọn, àní dá wọn mọ̀, a lè mọ̀ bọ́n ṣe jẹ́, but most of them see wọ́n maintain ẹ̀gan ju àwa lọ. If you go to Brazil, the way tó fi ṣe òrìṣà, tó fi ṣe many practices of our identities, in fact, ó wà ahead many of our people nílé. So àṣà wa ṣe pàtàkì gan ni, identity wa ṣe pàtàkì, ohun ìdánimọ̀ wa ó jẹ́ nǹkan tó jẹ́ pé a gbọ́dọ̀ tó jẹ́ pé ó jẹ́ pàtàkì, gbọ́dọ̀ jẹ́ number one ní ilẹ̀ Yorùbá.
Ẹ ṣé gan bàbá wa. Mo sure pé gbogbo àwọn aráalé tó ń gbọ́ wa, tó dẹ̀ ń wò wá, ó rí bí bàbá wa ṣe sọ fún wa pé ohun ìdánimọ̀ wa ó ṣe pàtàkì. Tó ń ṣe pé ojú ń tì mí, mo ò fẹ́ ṣe nǹkan báyìí. Tó bá ti jẹ́ àṣẹ ẹni, a ní láti máa ṣe. Mo dẹ̀ mo fi ti àsìkò yìí rọ gbogbo àwọn ọmọ káàárọ̀ oòjíire tó jẹ́ ẹ̀dọ́. Ẹ má jẹ́ kí àṣà wa tó máa tì wá lójú, òun ló máa sọ bí a ṣe jẹ́, ló máa mọ̀ pé ọlé yìí o, ọmọ Yorùbá ni wọ́n. Mo fẹ́ fi tọ̀wọ̀tọ̀wọ̀ mo fẹ́ fi rọ gbogbo wa pé tẹ́ ẹ jọ̀ọ́, àṣà wa ẹ má yẹ kó máa dójú tì wá. Ẹ jẹ́ ká wà proud pẹ̀lú àṣà wa. Ẹ ṣé gan bàbá wa. Màá dẹ̀ tún sọ wípé kí lẹ rò pé a lè ṣe tó máa fi jẹ́ tí Yorùbá àṣà wa tá máa fi gbéga.
tá bá fẹ́ gbé àṣà wa ga ó ṣe pàtàkì kan pé lákọ̀ọ́kọ́ ó yẹ ká ní ìmọ̀ nípa àṣà yẹn. You don't promote what you don't know. You cannot actually give what you don't have. So, number one, ó yẹ ká wà in charge. We have to be at the center of our culture, identity, and traditions. Ó yẹ ká promote it. So, láwọn ilé ìwé wa, láwọn ilé ẹ̀kọ́ wa, ó yẹ ká promote it. Ní ilé ẹnì kọ̀ọ̀kan, ó yẹ ká promote it. Ní gbogbo nǹkan tá a bá ń ṣe ó yẹ ká promote it. Then ó yẹ ká ní àwọn èèyàn tó àwa gẹ́gẹ́ bí Yorùbá a gbọ́dọ̀ wà we have to be enthusiastic about our own culture, not just language, because language is just one of it, but every other part of our culture, and we need to encourage others to do it. So when you look at some other parts of the world, one of the ways of promoting people's culture and identity is by creating activities that actually promotes people, activities that actually bring people together, make them practice or necessitate them to practice. So for example, àsìkò kan wà ní kíní ní ìlú wa níbi tán bí mi sí. So àwọn máa ń ṣe Masquerade festival every 2 years. So èmi àtọ̀rẹ́ mi kan bá ṣe plan ni pé báwo la ṣe lè tú ọ̀nà wo la ti lè jí gbà ká tún promote àwọn àṣà wa láàrin àwọn ọ̀dọ́. So I organize the dancing festival to Bata and all this Yoruba traditional drum. Ní púpọ̀ but I try pé ìbá díẹ̀ ta ní in our own youth age and our own experience, I put nǹkan big small present together. And they presented fún àwọn tó bá, these best dancers and co. So there are many other ways we can promote this. So this is just one of it. Make it lucrative. Encourage young people, children to promote it. Another way is also media. Our media activities why you go promote different aspects of Yoruba culture. And this actually it's not about whether you are, whether you are learning other, there's nothing wrong in speaking English or learning other culture or something, but you must have a root. So we need to begin to also see how we can always, no matter where we are, no matter who we are, no matter what we choose in life, we have a link to the root. So it's very, very important. So, and these are some of the ways. Àǹfààní láti lè promote ó ṣe pàtàkì ká máa promote àwọn ọ̀dọ́ wa, àwọn tó bá tún tẹ̀lé wa lẹ́yìn ọ̀nà kan náà tá a bá ti lè rí tá a fi lè máa encourage wọn ká máa promote a máa ṣe. Àwa Yorùbá dẹ̀ ti establish well-developed way of festivals. So ṣàṣà ní ìlú nílẹ̀ Yorùbá tí ò ní cultural festival or anniversaries and co. So àwọn nǹkan wọ̀nyí ló yẹ ká try láti pé ká tún máa promote dáadáa. Ìjọba dẹ̀ yẹ kó tún máa ràn àwọn èèyàn lọ́wọ́ ní ọ̀nà tán lè fi máa promote funding some of these cultural practices and even festivals and festivities and activities. And I need láti organize it because tá a bá organize it, ó máa wà chaotic. Tí nǹkan bá dẹ̀ wà chaotic, ó máa ń jẹ́ káwọn èèyàn máa ní passion láti pé kán wá participate, but tó bá ti wà organized, I think we will go a long way with it. Yeah. So that's it.
Ẹ ṣé gan bàbá wa. Ó ní àwọn ọmọ káàárọ̀ oòjíire ló ti ń gbọ́ báyìí sí láti mọ̀ pé àwọn ní láti gbé àṣà wọn lárugẹ tí ẹ pé kò ní parun. Gbogbo àwọn tó wà nílé náà pé àṣà wa ó ṣe kókó fún wa. A ní láti máa gbé lárugẹ. So wọ́n lè máa mọ̀ pé no, ọmọ káàárọ̀ oòjíire ni wá, because àwa ọmọ káàárọ̀ oòjíire inú wa máa ń dùn ibi tá a bá dé, a dẹ̀ máa ń fira hàn pé ọmọ Yorùbá ni wá. Ẹ ṣé gan bàbá wa. Mo tún fẹ́ béèrè àwọn question kékeré kan náà ni again pé nípa àtúnbí Yorùbá, báwo ló ṣe máa rí ní ilẹ̀ Áfíríkà àti ilẹ̀ gbogbo àgbáyé?
Very, very important question. Any people máa ń béèrè lọ́wọ́ mi pé àti ẹ̀ ń pariwo pé kí Yorùbá dìde, kí Yorùbá jí, kí Yorùbá dìde, kí Yorùbá ṣe kinní kan, pé kí tiẹ̀ ní Yorùbá máa ṣe fún kinní. I think we have done it in the past, and this is not something we cannot do again. When you look at in the past, Tabawo networking from Ile-Ife, and even not just Ile-Ife, there's virtually no Yoruba city, Asian city, tí ò ní characteristics, àwọn forms of development that we extend is the other part of the world. In fact, when Europeans first had contact with the West African society, Yoruba wà lára àwọn community tó máa ń supply nǹkan fún wọn ní ìlú òyìnbó, tó máa ń supply aṣọ tó ti produce finished product, not raw material. So aṣọ tá ti rán láti from Ekiti to Ọ̀ṣun to different parts of Yoruba land tó máa ń lọ sí etí òkun, tó máa ń kó lọ táwọn òyìnbó ń rà, tó ń tà fún àwọn West Africa tó kù, tó dẹ̀ tó ń tà ní, tó ń kó lọ sókè òkun, tó ń kó lọ sí Brazil tó ń bẹ̀. So kò ń ṣe nǹkan tá a ti ṣe rí. When it comes to the development, and between I think 1540 and end of 18th century, Ọ̀yọ́ jẹ́ ìlú tó ṣe pàtàkì jù ní West Africa. In fact, it was the largest city in West Africa, and it's one of the most well-renowned in West Africa. Archaeological evidence to show many things fún wa nípa Yorùbá greatness. So eléyìí ò ṣe nǹkan tó jẹ́ pé ó jẹ́ tuntun pé kìíní ojoojúmọ́ la ṣe ń rí àwọn evidence, new evidence, and there are so many historical materials or so many cultural texts that have been written about Yoruba nípa greatness ìwà. So it's not something tí mo lè máa summarize discuss ní online. If you do your research, you will find so many about it. But one thing we need to understand is that we were actually way ahead in many things. We were well organized. When it comes to politics, Yoruba has one of the most elaborate political systems. Àwọn kan máa sọ pé we have this authoritative day ọba ní kìíní kan ọba nìkan ló ń gbàjẹ́ pé kìíní kan. That's not so. Ọba láṣẹ bẹ̀tà ní àwọn ìjòyè pàtàkì ìlú kọ̀ọ̀kan dẹ̀ ní kìíní àti ìletò kọ̀ọ̀kan oníkálukú ní organized system ẹ̀. So a ti develop ní side yìí. Secondly, tabawo in terms of economy, our economy was, we had people traveling all over West Africa, moving from one place to another. In pre-colonial period. And even when we had the Western Nigeria, that's during the early colonial, late colonial and early Nigeria period, when we have the Western Nigeria, we have so many development, thanks to some of our leaders like Chief Obafemi Awolowo, who created so many things. We had television system that even many European countries did not have at that time. So when we come to development, we were there. Today, go to any innovation center in the world, hospitals and you will find a Yoruba there can develop other parts of the world. So why am I saying this? There's a question asking that why is like Black people in the US, for example, they are still shouting Black Lives Matter. In Haiti, one shouldn't suffer with what we call it. And anywhere you even go, Black are still the underrated race in the world today. People look down at us because if you look at virtually every African country, we don't really have this kind of great Black nation. And Yoruba is known for as Ogadulawo. Now, to Yoruba develop, don't they reincarnate, don't they get their things together and evolve again. Yoruba will serve like China of Africa or like Japan. So now, you may only touch China. You will first of all respect China. You first of all respect the Chinese. And the Yoruba has all these potentials to be the China or the Chinese of Africa. We have all the what you call. So imagine bringing all this development, all these characteristics together in one place. You will see that we will have a great Black nation, a great African nation. And once that happens, even our Black Americans abroad, our Brazilians and Blacks in Brazil and all over the world would always say, oh, we have a great African nation, and it's Yoruba. Besides that, you will see that it will also open doors of many other African societies. Even people who are not Yoruba, I wanted to study about Yoruba, historical and many things about Yoruba. Yoruba needs to pave the way for other Africans. And that's what we have to do. So it's not a matter of exaggeration. It's not because I'm Yoruba or something like that. It's something that is obvious. It's something that is evidence. So we need to begin to think about it. We need to work towards it. We need to embody this greatness we have. Once we embody it and started developing ourselves, we have all the potentials. So once we do that, I think we will take a lead and we'll be the pride of the Black race. And other Blacks will be looking at us as the center of Black civilization. So, yeah, that's what I can say about that for now.
Thank you so much. Adúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ bàbá wa. Bàbá wa ti ṣí wa létí pàpọ̀ pé àwa tí a jẹ́ ọ̀dọ́ Yorùbá a níṣẹ́ gidi gan láti ṣe, pé a ní láti mọ̀ pé a ní láti mú Yorùbá wa ní ìkúnkúndùn láti ṣiṣẹ́ fún ilẹ̀ Yorùbá náà tí ẹ pé òun náà máa fi ga bíi ti àwọn ìlú gíga tí ó dárúkọ lẹ́ẹ̀kan yẹn bíi China, bí àwọn Europe, bí àwọn US táwọn náà fi gbé ìlú wọn ga, pé àwa ọmọ adúláwọ̀ náà a ní láti ṣiṣẹ́ gidi gan láti gbé ìlú wa náà ga tó jẹ́ Yorùbá. Ẹ ṣé gan bàbá wa. Mo tún fẹ́ béèrè àwọn question tó yẹ pé èyí ló máa jẹ́ question tí máa béèrè last time máa tún mú ètò náà sí ẹ̀gbẹ́ kan fún lẹ́yìn. Mo kàn fẹ́ béèrè ni pé ilẹ̀ Yorùbá náà tí à ń pariwo, kí ni ìlọ́wọ́sí yín fún ilẹ̀ Yorùbá náà àti fún àwọn ọ̀dọ́ tó wà nílẹ̀ Yorùbá náà?
That's a very interesting question. Like I said before, I'm a social cultural critic and a literary analyst. When I look at society, one of the things I look at is the narrative that makes the society great. Because narrative ló máa ń kọ́kọ́ jẹ́ kí society nǹkan tó ń sọ nípa ìlú ló máa jẹ́ kí society great. Àwa Yorùbá dẹ̀ ní gbogbo orú nǹkan báyẹn bí oríkì, Ìjálá and all these things. All of these things are sources of empowering. So my number one mission is to make sure that we begin to see some of the narratives of the Yoruba, narratives of the greatness of Yoruba. We begin to see them, we begin to develop them, we begin to live them, we begin to embody them in ourselves that, this is some of it, these are our great, these are our true identity. So our concept, bí ọmọlúàbí, Ògo Adúláwọ̀, and all this philosophy, how do we elaborate them and extend them to every aspect of life? Because our concept, our baba ńlá wa àtàwọn ìyá láyà wa, our concept not develop. Òun ló fà á tó ṣe jẹ́ pé crime rate wà very, very low among the Yoruba. Our concept yìí la develop tó ṣe jẹ́ pé we were able to live together in harmony. Àwọn ìlú Yorùbá máa ń lè live together in harmony because we have a way of seeing, we have a way of tolerating, we have a way of tolerance, a concept of democracy. To yẹ kó tó wà standard ju ti eléyìí táwọn òyìnbó gan wà fún wa lọ, tó wà very, very standard. So, but sometimes because of problem ta ní society wa ráyè develop àwọn concept yìí, ó ti obstruct àwọn concept yìí. So ó yẹ ká máa revive wọn because tá bá ṣe ń revive concept yẹn bẹ́ẹ̀ náà ni a ṣe máa develop sí, òun ló máa jẹ́ ká lè move síwájú. So ipa tèmi lè kó ń bẹ̀ ni pé kí n máa promote some of these concepts, some of this culture and co. Ó dàbí ọ̀dọ́ kan tó pàdé mi nígbà kan tó béèrè lọ́wọ́ mi pé òun fẹ́ mọ̀ nípa ara òun, ó béèrè orúkọ ìlú ẹ̀, mo béèrè orúkọ ìlú, ó sọ orúkọ ìlú ẹ̀ fún mi, mo lọ ṣe research nípa ìlú ẹ̀, mo wá fún ní àwọn oríkì táwọn ìlú ẹ̀ ní. Ṣé nígbà tí mo fún, ó change mentality arákùnrin yẹn, ó yà lẹ́nu pé ṣó àwa náà la ní kíní bí eléyìí. Ó wá dàbí ìgbà tó bá yẹ pé yàn, bí ìgbà tí nǹkan bá gun, bí ìgbà tí Ṣàngó gún yàn, tó jẹ́ kéèyàn máa tú, ó jẹ́ kí ó change mentality yẹn. Àwọn concept kan wà tó jẹ́ pé tó bá develop ẹ̀ tán àti ó lè jalè gan because wà ní pé ó lè something kéèyàn jalè is something below my standard. Báwa Yorùbá ṣe máa ń ronú nìyẹn. So one of my own mission is to begin to enlighten us, to write, to speak, to encourage. Tó bá ní anything tí mo lè ṣe kí n lè fi promote Yorùbá, àṣà ipa tèmi ń kó nìyẹn. And our education system is also terrible for now. So my aim is also to improve and to contribute to education because I need the láti tí yẹn bá fẹ́ develop society, àwọn ọ̀dọ́ náà ṣe pàtàkì. Tá a bá carry àwọn ọ̀dọ́ along with our development, we are doing nothing. Because tá a bá wà lókè, àwọn máa wà ní somewhere else. So ìyẹn ò dé. Àwọn ọ̀dọ́ dẹ̀ máa ń wà agile, wọ́n máa ń wà active ju àwọn àgbààgbà lọ. So that's why tá a ṣe gbọ́dọ̀ fún wọn ní encourage wọn and feed them with principles that will empower them so that one they compete, in fact, one they do better than anybody elsewhere in the world. So these are some of the missions I intend to embark on.
Ẹ ṣé gan àmì àṣẹ Olódùmarè á ràn yín lọ́wọ́ láti jẹ́ tí ẹ kọ́ àwọn ọ̀dọ́ wa láti mọ ìṣẹ̀ṣe wa àti àṣà wa àti jẹ́ pé pọ̀ ní jẹ́ kí ìdánimọ̀ Yorùbá náà tó sọnù. Ọlọ́run á fún yín ṣe lágbára Ọlọ́run. Àbí ẹ ṣe ń gbà pé ẹ ṣe ń rò láti ṣe náà Olódùmarè ọba ògo wá jẹ́ kí ó ṣe é ṣe fún yín. A lè dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín fún èyí pé a pè yín pé ẹ wá. A dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín gbogbo àwọn aráalé ọ̀pẹ tí máa kí yín pé ètò ìní pé àwọn gbádùn ẹ̀ pé ẹ yànnà lẹ́ẹ̀ fáwọn láti mọ̀ nípa àṣà àti ìṣẹ̀ṣe àti ẹ̀sìn pé ọ̀pẹ tí máa dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín gidi gan fún ètò ìní pé a pè yín pé ẹ̀dẹ̀ wá náà pé ọ̀pẹ tí máa dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín pé ẹ ṣé gidi gan ni o. A dẹ̀ ti kó gbogbo ojú tó ń wò wá náà a dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín fún àsìkò náà tẹ́ fi ń wo ètò ìní náà tí àwa Yoruba Global Youths mú wá fún yín. A dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín fún àsìkò náà. A dẹ̀ ti kí gbogbo orí adé pé ẹ ṣé fún àsìkò tẹ́ ẹ fi wò wá náà. A dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín. Mo dẹ̀ ti lọ sí àwọn ẹlẹgbẹ́ mi náà tó jẹ́ kí ètò tó ṣeé ṣe ní èní. Mo dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ wọn tí ó tì mí lẹ́yìn tó jẹ́ kí ètò èní tó ṣeé ṣe. A dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ Yoruba Global Youths Media. A dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ a dẹ̀ ti dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ gbogbo àwọn adarí náà tó jẹ́ kí ètò tó wá sí ìmúṣẹ láti kọ́ àwọn ọmọ Yorùbá ní ìṣẹ̀ṣe àti àṣà àti ẹ̀sìn wa. A dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín gidi gan. A dẹ̀ tún dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ bàbá wa again pé ẹ ṣé gidi gan ẹ kú tọmọ ènìyàn tí a pè ń tẹ̀lé jẹ́ wa lẹ́ẹ̀kan náà. A dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín ẹ ṣé gan. Báyìí a máa mú ètò náà tì sẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ kan. A máa tún mú wá fún yín bí bá ṣe mú wá náà ní èní ní ọ̀sẹ̀ tó ń bọ̀ níjọ́ Wednesday a tún máa pàdé. Ẹ ṣé gidi gan.